Hi guys, today we are going to talk about stuttering. One of the main questions that I hear nowadays is there a difference between stammering and stuttering? So the answer to this could be yes and no. It depends how technical you want to get. So stammering is when you have involuntary pauses. So to us in stuttering, we call those blocks. In stuttering, there's many different ways that you could stutter. You could stutter by repeating initial syllables, words, sentences, phrases, and you can also stutter by elongating the words, such as, instead of cookie, making it cookie. And you can also stutter by having blocks, which means there's no airflow and coming out. So the airflow stops, which is the same thing as stammering. So I guess we can say that stammering is one of the ways that you could stutter. Another difference between stammering and stuttering is that stammering is used in British dialect and stuttering is used here in North America. So it's kind of the same and kind of not. It depends who you're speaking to. Let's talk a little bit about what causes stuttering. So stuttering has many different causes. It depends what kind of stuttering. So there is neurogenic stuttering, which occurs to patients that have suffered a brain injury or suffer from a brain debilitating disease such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. So neurogenic stuttering causes are usually for adults or I guess for a child who has suffered a brain trauma. There's also developmental stuttering, which occurs to children between the ages of 2 to 5. It has to do with the myelination of the brain and using the right hemisphere versus the left hemisphere when using language. It also has to do with the way your language develops and a lot of environmental factors and genetic factors that go along with development as a child. There's also psychogenic stuttering, which occurs to patients who have suffered a psychological trauma and they're psychologically have been predisposed to stuttering. So that's a different kind of stuttering as well. Is stuttering hereditary? It has been proven that stuttering is genetically based. So there are certain chromosomes that have been pinpointed to produce stuttering. It does have to do a lot with the genes, but it also has to do a lot with your temperament, what kind of person you are you sensitive? It has to do a lot with your environment, how you grew up, where you grew up, and what kind of environmental factors. So it's a mix between your genes, your environment, and your temperament. So it's not just hereditary, but doesn't mean that it's not hereditary. So it's a combination. If your child has early signs of stuttering, you should definitely keep an eye on. The signs that you should look for are, for example, repetitions. Children start stuttering by repeating syllables. So if your child all of a sudden starts repeating, I, more than 2 units at a time. So it's not just I. It has to be I. So 3 plus, that is a red flag for stuttering. If your child kind of has a block after it, so it's like I want, a cookie, that is something to look for. And if your child is making the vowels or the words longer, so I want a cookie. These kind of things are not things that we consider within normal limits for kids. So if your child starts to do that, you should definitely keep an eye on it. If your child is between the ages of 2 to 5, they might start and it might fade off. It's spontaneously, they will recover from it. But if you see that it's been going on for a while and it's kind of getting worse as it goes along, then it's definitely something that you have to look into. A lot of kids stutter on the word I. They stutter on pronouns. They stutter on articles. So most of the times they don't stutter on content words, so they probably won't stutter on verbs. They won't stutter on adjectives. They'll stutter in pronouns, like I said. So you have to kind of keep an eye out. Write down a sheet of paper what they stutter. When they stutter is also really important. Does your child stutter in the morning? Does your child stutter at night? Does your child stutter when they're excited, when they're telling a story? These are all things that we look for because most kids start stuttering when they're excited and they're in a rush to speak. And they don't stutter when they're calm, when it's a peaceful environment. So these are kind of the things you should look for. This is what we look for when we evaluate a child who stutters. How do you look for help from a speech therapist? So the first thing you should do is talk to your pediatrician about it and ask for a prescription for an evaluation. Once you come in for an evaluation, we do run a series of tests. Most of the times we do the SSI-4, which is an index for stuttering, where we take a sample of how long your child stutters for. So how many seconds does he actually repeat the word? We take a sample on how many times they repeat the word, so on the frequency. And we also take a sample on any physical movements or any physical concomitants that go along with the stuttering, such as blinking or head nodding or stomping, or any of those things is also something to look for. If your child's stuttering and they do faces or they kind of make a gesture, that's something to keep an eye on. Stuttering is diagnosed after we give the test and we see that the frequency is too high or the duration is too long. So what do we consider normal is 93% of your speech should be fluent and 7% of your speech can be disfluent. So if it's over the 93%, if it's under the 93%, then that's an issue. So if your child is stuttering on 10% of his conversation, then we consider that to be stuttering. Like I said, developmental stuttering, it occurs only in children from the ages of 2 to 5, and as quick as it comes is as quick as it can go away, and depending on several environmental factors that go along with the stuttering. So if your child is developing sort of a stutter, my suggestion is that you start speaking really, really slow, that you don't give your child tasks that are taxing on the brain. So a lot of parents think it's cute to tell their kids to say a really difficult word, a really long sentence, or something that's really taxing on the brain, and that actually creates a lot of stress for the child, and sometimes it can create for the child to be disfluent, which in turn can produce more disfluency. So we don't encourage for parents to make their kids kind of show off in a way where they're sounding really, really smart, because it can actually be detrimental for their language development. So that's something that I always tell parents not to do, and I always suggest that parents don't stress out the kids. So don't kind of wake them up in a rush, don't make them eat their breakfast in a rush, don't rush them. Rushing a child can also produce disfluencies. So you kind of want to be grounded and peaceful and go slow. Like I started the video saying, there are different types of stuttering. There's repetitions, which is when you repeat either syllables, you repeat words, or you repeat phrases. And the repetitions are more than 3 units, which is more than 3 times. So that's one way of stuttering, which is the most common way, which is the first way people start to stutter. Then there's prolongations, which is when you make the words really, really long. That's usually the second step to stuttering. And then there's blocks, which is when there's no airflow and nothing comes out and you're kind of stuck, which is like, and they try to push through for the word, but it doesn't come out, which that's also what people call stammering. So those are the different types of stuttering. Like I said a little while ago, what can you do at home to reduce stuttering? You have to talk slow. I know it sounds kind of silly and it sounds like something super common, like it's not a big deal, but it's a huge deal. Your rate of speech should be slow for a patient who's starting to stutter. Also, you want to take away environmental factors that can create stress. If your child, is not a morning person or takes longer, plan for a longer time so your child can move slowly. Don't try to rush. Also, if your child is a talkative child, don't cut them off. Don't ask too many questions. Don't interrupt them. And the most important things that you can do is give your child positive feedback. So don't make the child, feel self-conscious that they're stuttering. Don't stress them out, telling them start over, do it again. You don't want to do that. You don't want the kids to feel not good enough, especially in their language abilities, because that will create more and more disfluencies in the future. The exercises you could do at home, like I said, are all the same things. Talk slow. You want to talk to your child in a slow speech rate. What do we consider to be slow? About 110 words per minute is considered to be slow. 120 to 160 is considered to be conversational speech, and anything over 160 words per minute is way too fast. So I know that's probably pretty technical and nobody's going to sit with a stopwatch, but just try to speak really, really slow. If you think you're speaking slow, you're speaking slow. If you guys have any further questions, feel free to visit my website or give me a call. Thanks for watching.